Hello AP Calc students, Mr. Record here. We're going to do a short video on how to use the TI-Nspire and do some regression. Currently my students working on a lab where you're measuring the radius of a certain glass at various increments, and then hopefully with that data you can generate an equation that you can perform some calculus with and ultimately find the volume of the glass. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, obviously you've taken your measurements and you've got your data. You're going to want to create a list and spreadsheet page. Now for your particular lab, I think the first page of your final product does have to consist of a notes page, which is rather easy to do. If you want to do that notes page later, you can certainly insert that prior to your list and spreadsheet page. So I'm going to start with that first of all. And you can do one of two things. From your screen, you can select this icon right here, or you can select New Document and then choose, I went pretty fast there, but you could choose List and Spreadsheet. So it's going to be very important that you label your first row. You see the little tag here that looks like a label. So you want to just call these things some kind of logical names. In the case of the lab that you are using, increment or INC or any kind of abbreviation would work really well there. I'm a little hesitant on using the word width because the values that are going to be in this column are sort of a progressive accumulative distance from the origin. So using the word width is kind of a misnomer there. And then of course, column B, radius would be a great name. You don't want to fill anything into these two columns because that's where we would typically put an equation. So you can just enter your data. Now this data I'm going to enter is very fictitious. I'm just going to say I used a 0.25 increment. So I'm going to just enter my increments here. Bear with me. Hopefully I don't forget any of them. And of course the number of data pieces that you have will certainly vary. I've seen this lab work pretty well if a student has at least 15 pieces of data. So I'm going to stop there at 4.5. That should be plenty enough. I think that's 19 pieces. And then for the radius, yeah, I'll have fun here. We'll just start to make up some things. Not sure what kind of shape this is going to give me. Hopefully it will be something that we can work with. And let's say that it shoots back up here. And then let's have it come back down. And then finally maybe pop back up. All right, so once you've entered your data, there's really a couple of different ways that you can perform regression. Those of you who have maybe taken an AP Stats class here at Avon High School, you probably performed your regression from this particular screen. I don't really advocate that because you really don't get to see the beauty of the data and the sketch and what that looks like. So I would suggest that we add a page. So what we're going to want to do is we could go into menu, insert, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. We're going to go into Control Doc, where it says plus page, and we're going to add a data and statistics page. Obviously, you're going to see your points all scattered about in a very random fashion, so we need to tell the x-axis what to do. So if we click down into this bottom part, we want to choose increment for the x-axis, and then we will click over to the y-axis area and choose the radius. All right. It's probably likely that none of you have a shape that looks like this. This is not very conducive to doing some of the things that I want to do, hence my silliness in trying to make up this data, but that's sort of besides the point. If you've done this well, you should begin to see possibly a profile of your glass. Now, the scale might adjust, might need to be adjusted a little bit, to bring it really into full focus, but I doubt too many of you have a glass that looks like this, but no worries. The next thing that you're going to want to do is decide what kind of regression that your data models. Well, that's a big challenge here for me. If you seem to have data that just sort of has an increase to a decrease type of behavior, then you probably have something that could be classified as quadratic, as you know. If you have something that increases, decreases, and then maybe increases again, possibly cubic could be your pattern. You have to just play around with various types of regression and see how many of these points that particular graph would traverse through. I'm not sure what I'm going to try here, to be honest, but we'll play around with it nonetheless. So you would go into Menu, and you would go into Analyze, and you would choose option 6, Regression. Now here's where you've got a pretty wide array of options. The array that you have here is a little bit more, it's a little different, I should say, than say Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel will allow a little bit higher powered regression. Notice that the Nspire stops at quartic for polynomial regression, which is a 4th power. It's possible some of you might have something that could be a 5th or a 6th power, but most likely there's going to be something in this list that's going to work. So seeing as how a lot of my points are sort of kind of all over the place, I might try quartic. And you can see that it's sort of a fail. I didn't do a great job, I think, of traversing through as many of these points as possible, and this would probably not be a very good option. What you could do is hit Control Menu. I hit the right mouse button, but if you hit Control Menu, of course you need to be on the graph, I believe. Control Menu. Oh goodness. I'm going to actually remove my regression using this option. What I would suggest, if you have a regression that you were not happy with, you could just do the undo. Control Escape should undo. Let's try a different regression here. Let me try a sinusoidal. I'm going to probably go out on a limb and say that I don't think I'm going to do much better than this. I certainly miss a few points here from the beginning, and these guys up here, I don't think I have any chance of ever replicating. There's a chance that if you have data points that are all scattered out like this, you may have done some mismeasuring and you might want to go back and remeasure a few of those points. But nonetheless, let's say that this is the regression equation that you are satisfied with. There's just one more thing I want to show you. Notice that this equation is pretty precise. We have 6 decimal places of accuracy right up here at the beginning. And the equation is typically going to be quite lengthy. You might even have to, kind of slide it back and forth to see it in its entirety. Well, what I wanted to tell you is that you do not have to write this equation down necessarily in order to retype it. Now you probably, would have to write it down on a piece of paper if you were going to hand a lab in with pencil paper. But since your lab is going to be primarily done on the Nspire, what you could do is, let's say when we go to a new page, the calculator page, which is the last page that you need to submit, and let's say that you need to do something with that equation. Let's say that we need to integrate it, which is probably very likely something that you're going to do. We could hit Shift and plus for our shortcut. Now I'm going to just put some fake boundaries in here, 0 to 2. By no means do these boundaries really mean anything in terms of the lab and the volume, so I want you to know that. Now, when you get to this point, we need to be able to retrieve that equation. I think the best way to do that would be to go into your var option here, which is the button above 9, and then you'll see several pieces of information here. The first two might be kind of recognizable, but then if you keep going down a little bit, you should see an option here called regression equation. It's from your statistics page. If you highlight that and hit enter, you would see this particular statement. You're going to have to input the independent variable, which of course was x, and then of course put your x here as your differential argument. And believe it or not, I promise you it's all in there. If you hit enter, it will compute something. I know it's a little bit hard to fathom that that's exactly what's going on. You get basically an area of about 3, and I think it's not too difficult to believe that just this region right here would give us that area of about 3. But remember, what your job is to do something much more robust than just finding the area. You're going to be finding the volume of the glass, so obviously this equation has to be altered just a little bit. And then just as a quick heads up, you can also do your calculation for your relative error on this same page. And the two calculations for the actual relative error for your volume after you fill up your glass with water and this particular actual volume that you've estimated should all fit nicely here. Remember, this should be page 1.4. Your data and statistics page would be 1.3, and then 1.2 should be this page, because remember, your 1.1 will be just a notes page that has like the title of your lab and the names of your people doing the lab. Anyhow, I hope this helps you out, and hope you have much success with your lab. Thanks.